Hi, I'm Crystal Ray, and I'm happy to be here today to tell you about something that altered the course of my life. A terrible vehicle accident happened to me almost 20 years ago, and before we begin, I want you to know how much your soul means to me. It is truly a sacred moment as we come together, and it is an immense privilege to be the one who conveys this message of boundless love to you today. First, I'll tell you about my childhood. Growing up, my family was highly dysfunctional. With three children and a broken marriage, my mom worked multiple jobs to make ends meet. Having these three small ones rely on her for affection and care must have been incredibly challenging for her. As a kind of self-medication and to dull the agony, she apparently took to drinking. My mom's addiction, like almost all others, eventually became her entire life. In addition to becoming an alcoholic, she was a nasty person who was physically and verbally aggressive. Growing up was incredibly difficult. Between the ages of 11 and 13, I had one of the earliest formative spiritual experiences. My mother would get drunk and pound down the hallway one morning when I was a kid, but I can never remember how old she was. There was always an air of mystery whenever this occurred to the three of us. I was shivering in my pajamas as I listened to the thunder roll down the corridor at this particular morning. We never knew who it would be. It felt like it was me. The door slammed shut just as she snatched my hair, dragged me down the hall, and tossed me on the kitchen floor, breaking the unsettling silence. She pointed to the ceiling and demanded to know why, out of all my little girl responsibilities, I hadn't wiped the grease stain off it. Those were some tough times. I was juggling school, taking care of my younger sister, who was 10 years my junior, and the household. I was the only grown-up in the house, even though I was still quite young. I refrained from getting defensive or claiming that I had neglected it due to other obligations. It was as easy as getting on top of the counter and getting to work cleaning. I felt absolutely exhausted. My spirit was weary even at that tender age. Attempting to maintain my head above water was my main concern since I lacked a solid support structure. The dialogue with God began. I like to make light of the fact that the only time God was welcome in our home was when he was vilified. Besides a small amount of atheism and agnosticism, our household was devoid of any significant religious beliefs. However, I was still familiar with the accounts of Jesus, paradise, and damnation. I couldn't understand how a God could create hell, let alone let us fall short of perfection and then punish us for it, even when I was a little kid. As a result, I began communicating with God. I pleaded with God, saying, if you're really God, then I don't know why I can't know you're real, like you actually exist, before I die. My second, and perhaps most significant request was, if you could help my mom stop drinking, I would really believe in you. Armed with this, I continued to scrub the ceiling. I reflected on the importance of being a decent person and on Christians. I pondered, if you have to be good to go to heaven, and that's your only purpose for being good, then that's not really good. Or if you're good to avoid eternal damnation, hellfire, snakes, all the stuff I heard about as a little girl, then that's also corrupt. I thought to myself, I just want to be good because I'm a good person. It woke me up. It was as if the clouds parted and the sun shone down on us. For me, it was a profound awakening to the value of myself. My mother had been mistaken about me, I reasoned. That means I am a good person. Those struggling with addiction tend to take on the negative attitudes and behaviors of those around them. In my mother's eyes, there was no such thing as a decent, smart, beautiful, or otherwise adequate child. Actually, I believed that if I didn't exist, she wouldn't be an alcoholic and she wouldn't be subjected to all this strain. I felt responsible for everything she was going through. I had a new sense of energy and enthusiasm after realizing that all I wanted to do was be good. I walked off the counter while I was in a euphoric trance, which I continued to scrub the ceiling. Now things start to become interesting. My descent into space and time began. Stepping off a counter is like entering a swimming pool without any water. According to the laws of physics, your head will begin to drop. The moment my skull began to smash into the floor, space and time slowed down, and I became conscious of not one but three selves. The falling body, the entity residing within the body, and the all-knowing observer, who was also me but totally detached from the entire ordeal. I could identify with the little girl's soul essence that resided within her body, yet neither the body nor the objective observer touched me. I watched as I tumbled from a safe distance. Like I mentioned before, everything seemed to slow down, and I felt as though I was whirling through space and time like a tornado. Nothing except this spinning space and time could be heard. I was both in a fetal position and slightly elevated, observing everything from a distance. This peaceful, dark night enveloped me like a soft blanket, and I found myself there all of a sudden. Brilliant lights dotted the horizon far away. Something like a knowing rather than a psychic voice reverberated all around and within me. The message was, this is time and space, and those lights out in the distance are stars, and that's what you are. Suddenly, I had miraculously regained control of my body and was walking upright again, just like a cat. First and foremost, being on my feet was a shock to me when I regained consciousness. I thought I must have fallen, had this amazing dream, and struck my head because I'm trying to make sense of things that don't make sense. I hurried to the restroom in case I had sustained any kind of injury, such as a bruise, cut, or bump. If you fall from a height of 4 or 5 feet and hit the floor head-on, you should expect to get bruises. I had nothing, though, which was odd. In this brief interview, I will not go into detail about the rest of that story. Before I tell you about my near-death experience that occurred on February 23, 1997, I just wanted to give you some background. I was in a terrible vehicle accident not long after my divorce. Well, it wasn't exactly soon after. I had been divorced for approximately 15 months at that point. For a ski excursion, a guy had invited me to his mountain house. I took my cousin Carmen along since I wasn't quite ready to date. For all intents and purposes, she served as my chaperone or witness. Along with his family, we went on a ski excursion. I didn't feel prepared. We weren't having fun, and the match wasn't great. We were planning to return early. When I wanted to know if Carmen was prepared to return, I asked her. She confirmed. Then we turned around and headed back to the airport. We went up a mountain rather than down because we chose a missing road. He had complete control of the vehicle until he lost it while we were driving up this mountain on our way to the airport. The vehicle began to whirl on these snowy mountain roads. In the back seat, Carmen was yelling, and he was attempting to handle it. Something calming washed over me. In the midst of my meditative state, I beheld the rumbling of a speeding car descending the mountain, which collided with the side of my little red Jeep. Time seemed to have stopped again, and I stood back, taking it all in as if I were a witness to my own life or a spectator to my own existence. A celestial being's radiant presence greeted me as I stepped out of the Jeep. By being, I mean more of a mere presence. Watching the little red Jeep spin about, take a huge impact, soar over a cliff, which incidentally was 80 feet below, land at around 25 feet, and then flip over 10 times brought me immense comfort. At the same moment, I was experiencing more than one reality. The physical remains and the memories of being in the vehicle, taking a hit, falling from a great height, and then rolling over were all there. Another reality was that I was looking down from above, held and soothed by this brilliant being as we continued our conversation, which was neither verbal nor telepathic, but more like an instant download or knowing in which I was given information instantly. This glowing entity initially showed me that I had failed to value my own existence. Whoa, I didn't know I was going to die today. I believe that all people have this experience, maybe an unconscious, aware one, of believing in our immortality, but that we will all meet our Maker on that fateful day. I recall thinking this as the car was hit and plunged down the cliff. I had 2 young children at the time, and I was taken aback by the unexpected turn of events. A wave of profound sadness washed over me. In light of what this luminous person was demonstrating to me, I realized that life is a gift that I had never before appreciated. During that period, I saw 3 things that were really significant. One of the most surprising things that happened to me when we crashed into the ice wall at the base of that 80-foot cliff was the realization that I had never seen the sun go up or down before, or appreciated the gift of life to its fullest, or recognized the significance of a new day's beginning and its end, or even that any day could be a gift. It was as if I were the sun rising over the horizon and then descending into the cozy embrace of night and rest and recovery. That much is clear in my memory. I was devastated because my entire life had revolved on being an excellent daughter, mother, wife, ex-wife, friend, and responsible, decent person who always did what was right. This had been my mission from the time I was a little girl. Rather than being a source of delight, it felt more like a burden. Crystal, you are not alone. Every soul is here for the joy of its own existence. This was conveyed to me clearly and directly, and I was even instructed to spread the word. My mind was blown. Pure delight, isn't that why we're here? That instant was as bright as the aroma of new grass, and it made me grateful for the gift of sight, hearing, and taste, as well as for the capacity to smell the roses, to paraphrase an old adage. Being so preoccupied, I had neglected to do any of that. Getting my grocery shopping done, getting my kids to school, and navigating the labyrinth of daily life is a lot like many of us do in the modern world. The simple pleasures of life, like seeing the sun go up and down and smelling the new grass, had slipped my mind. I realized at last that I had never touched another person or embraced them genuinely until this moment. I mean, come on, I was a mother of two, and I had done everything from combing their hair to sending them to school to cradling and nursing them. Even more obviously, I had an impact on others. But the way things were presented to me was very different. As if we had never actually connected, it seemed. What I've learned is that when we embrace one another, we give and receive energy, love, healing, light, and the gift of these exquisite bodily manifestations of beingness. In light of these three sobering facts, I distinctly recall thinking, oh, well, it's too late for me as I threw myself towards the ground, which seemed to be closing in on me and what I took to be my last day on earth. I was whisked away to a realm where my existence unfolded before my eyes, a 360-degree panorama of each moment and its reverberations. At this particular moment, while I was still in this bright, embraced, reassuring place, my every thought, action, and good and evil were displayed to me. Except for the self-judgment I made, there was zero judgment. Actually, there was a lot of empathy for me, regardless of whether I was feeling guilty, ashamed, or judged. One of the most unexpected aspects of my near-death experience was being tenderly shown those good moments. We aren't shown the things that are usually signs of success. For instance, achieving professional accomplishment, monetary success, academic achievement, renown, or any number of other forms of official recognition. What was displayed to me as my success had nothing to do with what we would define as success according to our standards. What I saw were unplanned acts of generosity, when someone loved about me enough to do something nice for them out of the goodness of my heart, without expecting anything in return. Pictures of me doing good deeds, helping complete strangers, and tending to the needs of those who had betrayed or injured me, like my mother or a friend, came to mind. Despite the fact that their acts had deeply wounded me, I continued to care for them and strive to be a positive influence in their lives. Somehow, I mustered the strength to forgive them. By the conclusion of this unfolding, having felt these rippling impacts as both the viewer and the other person, and on and on and on, I had grasped the depth of every idea and deed. I was aware of how critical it was to ground our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in love. Is this my most loving response to this person, to this place, or to this thing? I ask myself now, even in the midst of the most trying and difficult times of my life. I should add that having a near-death experience or a spiritually transformative experience doesn't mean that we are never to have a dark night of the soul or be tested. Sometimes the answer is yes, and honestly, other times it isn't. However, until we find a way to improve, all we can do is try our best. I experienced a grace that was bestowed upon me. In my memory, this celestial creature informed me that I might choose from a variety of timelines or different destinies. Leaving Earth was a part of one of these timelines. During my brief exposure to these timelines, let's call it an instant download, since it all transpired within the time it took to plummet from a mountaintop and crash into an icy wall, I was shown that one of my life paths could lead me to leave this planet entirely, to die. It came as a complete shock to me when I thought, oh no, I can't do that because my children need me. They're going to be orphaned. The realization that my children would be perfectly okay without me came thunderously after that thought. As moms, we can't help but feel that our fate is closely tied to our children's. Yes, in many respects, however, in the end, the choice is solely up to the individual spirit. It was demonstrated to me that my children will do well. At my funeral, I even saw them. They seemed to have no trouble finding love, getting married, and enjoying life in general without my interference. Their whole life was before my eyes. It would have been an entirely different existence if I had returned with certain infirmities. There were other possible destinies. The live stream where I am currently sitting here in a podcast talking to you was the only one that really piqued my interest. The book that this celestial creature had informed me I would write was completed not long ago. You will write a book and tell the world that love is all that matters. I know this is a very old message, the being stated. However, the way I like to express it is by emphasizing that this love is not a romantic sort of love. There is no parental love in this affection. It encompasses dimensions that no human idea could ever hope to reach. All things, both light and dark, are embraced by this all-pervasive love. The love I'm describing is the one that counts, and it has no antithesis. A matter of fact, I saw a sign that said I would be asked to pen this book. That was really exciting for me. My words were cut short as I proclaimed, "Yes, that's what I will do. That's what I want to do. I want to tell the world that love is all that matters." And just like that, I was thrown into another car crash. As I recall, we were tumbling around in the dark, tumbling around while I was within my own body. I was at the base of the mountain when I regained consciousness, so I must have passed out. It seemed like we had either tumbled or been flung off the edge of the ledge, collided at a height of approximately 25 feet, and then twisted until we fell 80 feet below the mountain's base. Curiously, the Jeep was inverted. This is the part of the narrative that gets exciting and wild when I first came to consciousness. But I think you should know this, so I'll tell you. I was thrilled to be alive, somewhat taken aback, and slightly saddened because the last thing I recall telling this light being was, "Oh, well, I guess I'm going into the light." I reasoned, well, my life is over. There's no possibility for me to write this book or to come back. And then I was thrown back into this body. My heart raced with anticipation as I eagerly awaited the dawn. But a sudden terror gripped me as I thought, "Oh my God, this Jeep is going to explode," triggered by the distinct aroma of gasoline. The wheels were turning, and a wall of ice was visible. I tried to summon my cousin by name, but no one answered. Despite appearing covered in blood, the driver insisted he was unharmed. In order to get to the top of this mountain, I slithered out this window. No one could take it seriously. I mean, I actually conquered the mountain. Undoubtedly, I am not one to climb mountains. Actually, I lean toward the feminine side. However, I managed to ascend this frigid mountain, and everyone around me was asking, "Do you know what happened down there?" To which I replied, "Yes, there are two more people. You need to get down there." Suddenly, I began to empathize with everyone, understand their thoughts and feelings, and experience their realities. This is the terrifying and bizarre part. I began to have visions of the future, almost like miniature movies projected onto the screen. For instance, on my way to the automobile accident, I witnessed a man in rubber boots grab my wallet, tickets, and purse, all of which were necessary for me to visit my children, and escape away. I was in a state of mild convulsions, and all I can remember is screaming, "Can you please get my purse?" Despite the fact that my cousin was carted up on a stretcher, unconscious, and the driver was also removed from the vehicle. Everything was a haze, but I believe an ambulance took me to the hospital. The fact that I could sense every emotion and idea of everybody who touched me added to my disbelief. I knew everyone's emotions and sentiments and was having these out-of-body experiences while being chilly and numb. I was taken into the hospital as soon as we arrived. I'm not sure how I ended up inside, but I do recall a male nurse bending over me and muttering something along the lines of, "You guys were drinking and your cousin's going to die." My response was something along the lines of, "What? What are you talking about? I don't even drink," and the person driving the car didn't have more than a glass of wine. "We were not drinking." His response, "Well, you were doing drugs." I firmly asserted, "We did nothing." As I retreated, I noticed Carmen lying on a stretcher in one of the small rooms, still unconscious, with a group of people gathered around her. I forced my way in, placed my hand on her, and then felt a surge of energy, almost lightning, pulse through my body and land in my palms. Seeing her body tremble gave me the assurance that she would be all right. A calm tranquility washed over me, as if the ocean's waves had abruptly ceased their crashing. Again, the nurse seized my arm and yelled out, "You can't be in here." He did so, a movie-like footage of him violently assaulting someone, maybe his wife or girlfriend, the night before appeared. In a fit of terror, I screamed, "Let go of me," and bolted for the restroom, where I hid in a corner and wailed, "Nobody touch me. Nobody talk to me." My voice quivered with fear. "We need to get some x-rays." "Can I help you out of here?" asked a very kind nurse who bundled me in a blanket. I consented, as long as the other nurse stayed away from me. I had her word that he wouldn't. My neck was x-rayed when they transported me there. After they returned, they broke the news, saying, "We have some bad news for you. Your neck is broken." I thought, "Oh no, that can't be. That's not part of my life review." I recalled the presence assuring me that I would return, and that story didn't concern a broken neck. I felt the identical warmth radiating from my palm into my neck as I placed it on my neck. I protested, saying, "No, you need to take another x-ray." They did so and then some. There was an obvious fracture in my neck on the first one, but none of the others. After finally realizing the hospital wouldn't be held liable in the event that my neck was indeed broken, I signed away my rights and left. I returned home a few weeks later and promptly confined myself to a room. Since I was never the type of girl to have any sort of encounter with the paranormal or psychic, I found this period to be really terrifying. I started seeing auras out of nowhere. Incidentally, I was completely unaware of the concept of an aura. It felt as if other people's ideas were my own. I could feel them in my body. The depths to which people's shame and terror went astonished me more than any other emotion. That aura was so overwhelming that I felt like crying whenever I was in the company of other people. Carmen and I had a visit around 2 weeks following the accident. I was taken aback by her state as I entered the room. She was the most injured, with many head traumas. My neck wasn't broken, but I couldn't turn it either because of the severe whiplash. Aside from her eye sockets, Carmen's entire face was fractured. Swollen eyes and rubber bands over her teeth were telltale signs of her condition. I was terrified because she didn't seem like the stunning, glowing woman I remembered. "Crystal, this is your cousin Carmen, and you love her." I persuaded myself to approach her even though there were medical professionals, nurses, and her family members present in the room. They all seemed to be angry with me because I was the one who had invited her on the vacation and was therefore responsible for the terrible event that had transpired. I wasn't the one behind the wheel, but just being there made them so uneasy that they wouldn't even look at me. Such accidents can occur on snowy roadways. I was still somewhat uneasy about it. The story takes a turn for the intriguing when I approached Carmen, who lay in a coma, surprising everyone, including the doctors, nurses, and her mother. She opened her eyes the second my hand touched her. Everyone was taken aback. She stumbling up to me with her tiny IV, she proclaimed, "Crystal, I'm in the light. I've never been so radiant. I'm a star." I was astounded because when I was a little girl, I had been told that the lights that punctuated the night were stars, and that's exactly what we are. This was the universe's or God's method of confirming that the cosmos is undergoing some sort of magical, enigmatic, and miraculous transformation. It was crystal clear to me what she meant when she remarked, "We are stars." I recall her mother scowling and muttering, "Brain damage." Carmen promptly returned to her bed and slipped back into a sleep. Because of her strong religious convictions, her mother got quite terrified and suspected that I was involved in a poltergeist incident. My visits to Carmen were suddenly cut off, and I have no idea what she thought. It was heartbreaking that they warned me not to come and refused to let me in. Carmen and I had a beautiful reunion not long ago after we had lost touch for many years. Everything worked out for the best. She made an incredible recovery that baffled even her physicians. Grace exists in the cosmos. She resumed her role as principal violinist for the Dallas Opera after a full recovery. She found happiness after retiring, starting her own real estate company, and meeting her soulmate. On a last note, I get asked all the time if I can still sense people's emotions and thoughts and if physical touch may help them get well. This is how we will respond to your questions. Let's start with the first one. Although there is a spectrum of empathy, we are all fundamentally empathic. Because I found it intrusive, I figured out how to shut that door. Am free to do that if I so desire, but I have no intention of doing so. Not wanting to pry into someone's private place is why I deliberately shut that door. When it came to physically mending another person or myself, I felt more like a conduit for the healing energy. I am convinced that we are all channels for healing since this energy passed through me. Our very presence has the power to heal or to spin into a destructive negativity spiral. Our presence becomes a healing power when we maintain an enlightened and loving consciousness, when we choose love over fear, and when we strive to be graceful and compassionate. When I want to experience energy flowing through my body, I don't touch people. That doesn't mean it won't happen again. It just isn't happening right now. My life story was intertwined with a broken neck, so it was a blessing. I turned the clock backwards, then forwards. Every single one of our seemingly minor thoughts and actions has the potential to alter the trajectory of our existence on one of the countless timelines that exist. When a butterfly in Brazil flaps its wings, it triggers a tsunami, a phenomenon known as the butterfly effect. That exemplifies how powerful our thoughts and actions are. It was both terrifying and illuminating for me to learn that each of our human actions has the potential to affect not just our immediate lives, but also those of those around us, the cosmos at large, and even our own source. The advice that came to me first was to do the difficult things that make you happy. When you're happy, it shows that you're living your best life and making a positive impact. I now let myself feel it physically whenever I make a decision, whether it's a simple lipstick color or a life-altering one like whether to eat, make a phone call, or accept a job offer. There are no words to describe the far-reaching effects of the blessings bestowed upon me by this brush with death. The capacity to love and to alter the world through our thoughts and deeds is the most valuable thing I've learned. Finally, I want you to know how much I appreciate you listening, that I love you, and that I hope you choose love. Declining as the sun's rays bathe our faces as we fix our gaze fixedly on the sky. When the sun comes up, we all go down.